So originally, I had no plans to do anything, or at least do any other drama videos as of late. But considering the fact that there was some comments left on my previous K9-Aversion video, I figured, I kind of showcase these as well as kind of give my, response. Now, to one of them, I do give my response to one of her comments. But at the same time, there's quite a few things that she says that I don't agree with. Especially when it comes down to, her tactics of trying to shame people that disagree with her. So, without further delay, why don't we go ahead and get started on this. So, yeah, this will be interesting, to say the least.
Typical deranged dog worshipper thinking forced and unwanted genitalia invasion does not constitute sexual assault or rape.
Now, to give context, this was in reply to another commenter by the name of I have no clue what to put as a username, which I'm not going to lie, that's actually a really cool username. But they wrote, just in quote, I mean, she thinks dog sniffing people is compared to something like sexual assault, an insult to actual rape victims, so how crazier can she get? And to an extent, I kind of have to agree. I mean, especially when it comes down to comparing, kind of simple behaviors that can be prevented, trying to constitute that as rape. And I don't want to bring this up, but it kind of reminds me of a conversation that myself and the group had when it comes to, or at least on the podcast, when it comes to the treatment of animals. Because usually, in context, and I'm going by, just so you guys know, I'm going by the legal definition presented by Merriam-Webster for sexual assault, and the the term for RAPE. It usually constitutes, or at least describes, the action of one person committing an act of forced or illegal sexual intercourse towards another. And usually in context, that usually means that is implied to only being towards of one person towards another, never from an animal to another person.
Sexual assault is defined as an assault of a sexual nature that violates the sexual integrity of the victim. That's exactly what dogs do all the time. Deal with it. I'm not mocking anyone, I'm just pointing out the facts, and if you can't handle the truth.
So this kind of goes back to that whole thing I was saying a little bit ago, especially when it comes down to what is defined as sexual assault, or RAPE. I know that I'm more likely going to get demonetized anyways for saying sexual assault, but just to play it safe, I'm still going to, spell out the other word, because at this point it's, but anyways, what this person doesn't realize is, with websites like Merriam-Webster, it basically defines, sexual assault as... Now, if we were to play the quote-unquote dictionary game some more, if we were to look up the word assailant, which was in that definition for sexual assault, it would imply a person who attacks someone violently, meaning a person, a human, not an animal. And usually in context, it refers to a person. Again, not an animal. Now, the thing that gets me to, especially when it comes down to this person trying to make an argument or trying to push their agenda, is when they flat out tell us to just deal with it. As if to say that, it's only my opinion that counts, so just deal with it. Which, also with her trying to claim that she's pointing out facts, is, I want to say ignorant, to say the least, and to an extent very, very, for lack of a better word, stupid.
I see a professional to help me cope with the anxiety and depression I feel having to live in a world full of low IQ, selfish, deluded, irrational, callous, uncaring, unempathetic imbeciles like yourself. And yes, this professional, like many of my highly intelligent and educated friends, agrees with me, re dogs and cats. My husband's job isn't what you think it is, but go ahead and spread more untruths. We don't care. Unfortunately, there is no cure for awareness and compassion, but I've been practicing CBT and DBT to help me cope with the existence of you people, and it helps. Thanks for your concern.
You know, I love the fact that, especially when it comes down to, trying to understand other people's opinions, or at least when it comes down to her case, not understanding other people's opinions, instead of trying to understand what people are saying, she decides to berate or belittle individuals who are different from her, which is one of the things that we've accused her of, especially when it comes to not winning an argument. Especially with what she says here, where she claims that, people who don't agree with her are low IQ, selfish, deluded, irrational, callous, uncaring, empathetic imbeciles. And for the most part, at least I try... I'm going to say this because when it comes down to my videos, especially recently, I try my best not to use name-calling. Usually I'll claim, or I'll mention that, some people's actions are stupid, and sometimes I slip up. But at the same time, I try to give a modicum of respect to the other individual. But at the same time, you have to realize, too, especially when it comes down to opinions... Some people are going to have different opinions of you or of the situation or the topic that you're discussing. And sometimes, evidence that is presented does not, and I repeat, does not fall under the same category as your opinions that you want to believe. You may claim one thing, but evidence will eventually show another. So when it comes down to it, whatever. By the way, just so I can get this out of the way, whatever you go through for anxiety or depression, I'm sorry to hear that. And I'm sure that besides dog, there's a variety of other reasons why you would have anxiety or depression. But at the same time, the worst thing you probably should be doing is trying to kind of stir up the very people that you are against. Because then you have people that are going to fire back. And I can't stress this enough, especially when it comes to nowadays. And I leave it in the description for people to know that myself as well as Novakast do not approve of harassment. So especially when it comes to these interactions, do not harass this individual. Or at least go to their channel, try to strike it down or anything. Try to cause bully tactics. And I'm sure this person is going to consider some of the comments on my side as bullying. I don't agree with that, considering the fact that with a lot of them, they are more of kind of combating her logic.
About a year ago, I put out a video explaining how I carried a machete for protection when I confronted the neighbor from the end of his driveway about his loose pit bulls that were in my yard when my kids were outside playing. I explained to the owner that because I am such a loving and compassionate mother, I am prepared to defend my children from unpredictable predators that disfigure children in unprovoked attacks every day. Dogs are triggered by the frenetic movements and high-pitched sounds of children, which resemble the sounds and movements of prey animals in distress. I am aware of this fact, so I am understandably concerned about my children's safety. I am worried sick about my kids. Yet, you have zero compassion for me and continue to paint me as a monster. Interesting how you people ignore the truth and continue to spread lies about me. Why do you do that?
So, for this, she's referencing a video that she posted a while back where she talked about how she made threats to attack the neighbor's dogs. And, by the way, it's not as, reasonable as she's making it out to be. She basically said she was threatening the dogs for just existing, not for the compassion of her kids. And no offense to K9-Aversion, but unfortunately when it comes down to it, especially when it comes to some of the things she says on her channel, as well as seeing videos like this,
I will not be harassed when I'm in my own yard. I won't be harassed when I'm in my own yard, minding my own business. Stupid animal. Stupid owners. I'm in my yard, minding my own business. I won't be harassed.
It makes it hard to believe that what she said in that comment was 100% truth. But then again, I'm not her, so I probably wouldn't know exactly everything that's going on in her head. But at the same time, when you see evidence like that, with somebody kind of being irrational when it comes down to a dog who is clearly, if you see in the video, one, on the other side of the road, and two, behind a fence, and having this individual, using an air horn on this dog for no reason whatsoever but besides barking, and nowhere near the vicinity of her home, it makes me wonder if, again, she would actually be as reasonable as she tries to claim herself to be in that situation, which, unfortunately, I find doubtful.
You're as rabid and lacking in empathy as the dogs you worship. I am terrified for my kids' safety, and you don't care. You attack me because I am scared. There's another thing you have in common with dogs. You attack the fear and prey on those who show weakness. You are bullies, just like your dogs. I never mocked, bullied, lied, harassed, or threatened anyone.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god, stop fucking lying.
So, I'm sorry, but isn't calling somebody a low IQ, selfish, deluded, irrational, callous, uncaring, empathetic imbecile count as mocking? Last time I checked, that would be considered, an example of mockery. Bullied? Last time I checked, you endorsed, several individuals who were violent. Lying about information, most definitely. Harassed and threatened. Again, you endorsed, a group of people that were committing, threats of violence towards individuals that disagreed with not just you, but I Hate Dogs and themselves. Especially people that, particularly I Hate Dogs, dog lovers mentally ill, making claims of gutting people in their homes, as well as irrational thinker, making threats of violence towards people that disagreed with him. Oh, by the way, those two people who followed your channel endorsed people of mass shootings, or people that committed mass shootings. So unfortunately, it just goes to show some of the people that follow your channels and your rhetoric.
Apparently you missed my video called The Smear Campaign Against Me and What You Should Know, which is weird because you all seem obsessed with my channel. I've never carried any sinister acts or encouraged anyone to do anything sinister. You're making up lies about me, then accusing me of lying. Just admit you can't handle the truth about dogs.
So, let's kind of quickly go over this. First off, yes, you have endorsed a couple of people that have, in a sense, expressed acts of violence towards individuals who disagree with you, I hate dogs, and other people in the radical dog-hating community. And I can't stress this enough, I have to classify you guys as the radical dog haters, because there are those people that are afraid of dogs, and there are those people who allow their emotions to dictate their actions, who spread false information, and therefore harm, or at least do more harm, than what is essentially, what you guys would consider as good. Misinformation is very harmful to an individual, especially for somebody who is afraid of a particular topic or thing. And with you guys continuously spreading misinformation, spreading lies, spreading rhetoric, it only harms the individual for not knowing or having the right information about the topic discussed. So, I ask this question because you make this little comment. What do you classify as truth about dogs? The truth that you yourself has presented, which being biased, emotion-filled rambling, or the actual evidence of, when it comes to dogs, as well as prevention of some of the things that occur with dogs, as well as the training that dogs can be put through in terms of their behavior. And I'm sure her answer is going to be the first one that I brought up, which is delusional, to say the least. Now, a couple times there was a moment or two where I end up having to give my piece in this kind of conversation that she was bringing up, more particularly when it comes down to the semantics of the situation of sexual assault. And in turn, this is one of the comments that I end up presenting. And just so you guys know, I try my best to be, especially when it comes to this situation, I'm trying my best to be very civil with this individual. So this is the comment that I decided to post, responding to their accusations that sexual assault can also imply of animals committing sexual assault towards humans. I usually try not to chime into comments, especially when it comes to conversations like this, but the Merriam-Webster definition for sexual assault is illegal sexual contact that usually involves force upon a person without consent or is inflicted upon a person who is incapable of giving consent, as because of age or physical or mental incapacity, or who places the assailant, such as a doctor, in the position of trust or authority. Synonyms for sexual assault would be assault, rape, ravishment, or violation. In that, going further, if we were to show the definition for RIP, I know I said it before, it would be the unlawful sexual activity, and usually sexual intercourse carried out forcibly or under threat of injury against a person's will, or with a person who is beneath a certain age or incapacity or incapable of valid consent because of mental illness, mental deficiency, intoxication, unconsciousness, or deception. and I wrote in quotes, "Here is the link since you probably won't believe me," and I left the link for Merriam-Webster for everybody to see. I also continue by saying, "And usually discussions in the context for sexual assault or in any other case would only be referred to what one person does to another and not an animal to a person. Trying to claim that to be the case unfortunately does not make your statement true, especially since certain behaviors that you've spent too much time going over and regurgitating in your videos can be prevented," which is the key word, prevented, especially when it comes to the behaviors of dogs. But unfortunately, you refuse/fail to share that relevant information to your audience who is already afraid of dogs and are trying to find answers. Proper information is key to understanding the animals and situations you speak of, not biased, irrational fear-mongering that inevitably does more harm than good. And when it comes to the situation, my only concern, or at least my biggest concern, is the effects that this puts onto her audience, especially when in situations or the stuff that she talks about, it is nothing but irrational fear-mongering that does not help the situation whatsoever, especially when she spreads misinformation about the animals that she discusses, and incense, especially with a lot of people who are willing to just believe what she says, only harms that individual further, especially when they have already a fear for the animal that is being discussed. Now, when it comes to that comment, I've tried to be as reasonable as I possibly can, especially when it comes to the things she's saying and trying to address, especially with, trying to compare what animals do as sexual assault and trying to, again, question her logic and maybe put a new perspective into what she's saying. But, as you guys could probably guess, surprise, surprise, she doesn't believe that, and to some extent feel like she is, being accosted, and tries to correct me. And we'll get to that in a second, because there's more.
I just told you what happened with the machete, but it's in one ear and out the other with people like you. You'll continue to spin your misleading version of the story, no matter how many times I tell you the truth about what happened, because you can't handle the fact that I'm a decent person who is only concerned about her kid's safety, something you don't care about. I never wish death on anyone. The whole pregnant woman thing, I explained that over and over. I defended some guy who made threats before I knew about the threats he made. People keep insisting I defended him, and I am the crazy one. What I'm obsessed with is children's safety, public safety, and safety of seniors, public health, wildlife, and the environment. And only heartless, narcissistic people who would assume me or accuse me of using my children to gain sympathy points. I'm not in this for myself. I actually care about others, which is something you can't even begin to comprehend. I'm done interacting with you. By the way, many dogs will sniff your crotch and hump you any chance they get.
So, context for this one, because to an extent, I couldn't, or at least I don't have the time to go over every single comment. The comment thread will be on the old channel, or the old video, which was the K9-Aversion tries to call her detractors incels and fails. But this was in reference or responding to a comment from an individual called Ice, who made the remark that they were mocking victims of rape, as well as, in some sense, defending, or at least encouraging the behaviors of individuals like rational thinker. Actually, he uses the term irrational thinker, which I'm so glad I coined that. And I hate dogs, dog lovers, and mentally ill. So, discussing her comment. So, first, to kind of give a joke, because, to lighten things up a little bit, you haven't met my dogs. Second, Again, when it comes down to it, if you train your dog to not present a certain set of habits, you can prevent, a variety of things that dogs would normally do. Again, prevent. But unfortunately for you, you won't be honest and discuss this, especially with your audience who is already afraid of dogs, and you perpetuating that fear. Second, when it comes down to the defending thing, you were defending I hate dogs, dog lovers mentally ill. And you weren't just defending him, you were also endorsing his behavior, especially when it came to him making threats towards people like the Dark Reindeer. You were literally applauding some of the things that he said and as well as doing. You were completely endorsing what he was intentionally saying to individuals that did not agree with you. That in of itself is okay. And I don't agree with this whole sort of self-standing that you're trying to claim that you are for children's safety, public safety, as well as public health and a variety of other things. Especially with the fact that, in these comments, you try to make the claim or try to make the comparison of dogs humping or sniffing you, counting it as sexual assault. Since by legal terms, in a variety of different ways, no matter which section you look for it, it refers to human on human actions, not animal on human. Now, pushing forward, after replying to the comment from Ice, she then replies to the comment that I made where, again, I tried to be very cordial with this individual, but apparently they feel that I have accosted them, especially when trying to give a second point of view.
The Edmonton Police Service define it differently. They state on their website that sexual assault is defined as an assault of a sexual nature that violates the sexual integrity of the victim. RAM defines it as sexual contact or behavior that occurs without explicit consent of the victim. Wiki states, generally sexual assault is defined as unwanted sexual content. Perhaps the definition is lacking. Maybe we need to change the definition to include animals that other than human beings. You can take preventative measures such as not following a dog to be alone with a child, but dogs are always getting out somehow because it's their nature to escape their enclosures and perform vile acts. They will make unwanted contact with human genitalia, humping and penetrate our children if they get the chance, which speaks to their foul nature. It is not irrational fear-mongering to give people the facts. No matter what precautions you take, inevitably, dogs will do what dogs do.
Now, I'm going to assume that K9-Aversion, and for those who are probably wondering why I don't call her by her new channel name, I'll explain that in a little bit, but I'm assuming that K9-Aversion thought that I wasn't going to research the references that she pointed out, because when it comes down to it, I feel she was picking and choosing some of the things that she wanted to say to try to prove her argument. Here's the response that I made to her comment. You do realize you still made my argument. For the Edmonton Police Service in full state, sexual assault is defined as an assault of a sexual nature that violates the sexual integrity of the victim. Supreme Court of Canada held that the act of sexual assault does not depend solely on contact with any specific part of the human anatomy, but rather the act of a sexual nature that violates sexual integrity of the victim. When investigating a sexual assault, there are certain relevant factors to consider: the part of the body touched, the nature of the contact, the situation in which the contact occurred, the words and gestures accompanying the act, all other circumstances surrounding the act, any threats that may or may not be accompanied by force. By the way, words and threats, I'm pretty sure that's something that dogs can't do. But continuing with the example from the Edmont Police Service, the victim of a sexual assault can be a man or woman, and the attacker can be of the same sex as the victim. A spouse may be charged with sexual assault upon the other spouse, meaning by humans, not by animals. Your example of Rain describes actions that humans do to each other, and the wiki also describes sexual assault as sexual assault being, or is, an act in which a person, not animal, intentionally sexually touches another person without the person's consent, or coerces or physically forces a person to engage in a sexual act against their will. It is a form of sexual violence which includes child sexual abuse, groping, rape, forced vaginal, anal, or oral penetration, or a drug-facilitated sexual assault, or the torture of a person in a sexual manner, meaning human-on-human actions towards each other, not animal-on-human. In the description, I'll be leaving the links to both, or at least the wiki, Rain, and the Edmont Police Service when it comes to these topics. But if you guys notice, especially with that last comment that I made, you notice that is very lengthy when it comes to the explanations, and that's because when it comes to her describing what they say in those examples, she does not give the full context. In fact, only picking and choosing certain sentences to try to explain her narrative, which, unfortunately, according to the law as well as the definition, the legal definition, it is a human-on-human act, not a animal on human. And when it comes to her comment of trying to change the definition, I don't see that anytime soon, especially when I'm pretty sure to an extent a lot of people are not going to either consider or want to be lumped in the same degree of an animal committing sexual acts towards, a person, or a person committing sexual acts towards, a human. If anything, I'm sure victims would not appreciate you lumping them, to the same degree as animals. And by the way, when I mention your fear-mongering, your irrational fear-mongering, I usually talk about the biased, very biased articles that you use to try to get an emotional response when it comes to your videos. Expressing a fear at the topic that you discuss. Trying to make people afraid of these animals when really we should be understanding them, or to an extent have a understanding of how to deal with them and not be completely afraid.
You missed the part where I wrote maybe the definition is inadequate and needs to be changed to include animals besides humans. It will be changed. Future generations will realize it needs to be changed. Unwanted. Forced genitalia invasion is unwanted. Forced genitalia invasion, no matter how you look at it, it's astonishing you can't see that. Motivation is irrelevant. Species is irrelevant. People like you who excuse and tolerate this uncivilized, depraved behavior are very sick. The future is dog-free.
Now, upon receiving that particular comment, I haven't sent a reply because I was working on this particular video, but all I'm going to say is this. One, in your dreams about wanting a dog-free world, because I doubt that will ever happen, especially with how ingrained dogs are when it comes to our community. Second, I didn't forget or miss the part where you wrote that. Making that kind of argument is stupid when it comes to saying that the definition needs to be changed, especially since by legal terms, especially when it comes down to the act of sexual assault, the government is more likely just going to consider the acts of human on human, not on human on animal. So to an extent, they're not going to change that definition at any point. And your accusation that I excuse the behavior when it comes to dogs, I'm sorry, is despicable. Especially when I have repeatedly mentioned the fact that it can be prevented. And I basically endorse the fact that people need to be taught or shown the behaviors to prevent dogs from doing or committing those types of actions. You unfortunately don't want to see that, and instead want to try to smear my name because to an extent you are losing an argument that you unfortunately cannot win, especially when you yourself are being irrational.
Hey incel, at least get my channel name right so people can find it. Or is it too long for your lazy ass to type? Is it the spelling that's too difficult for you? Oh well, thanks for the publicity anyway. P.S. It was a joke.
So, I'm sure a lot of you are probably wondering why I just call her K9-Aversion and not what she wants people to call her, which is the defenders of humans and the natural world. And it's not because, one, I'm lazy, and two, the spelling is difficult for me, but due to the fact that when it comes down to it, she doesn't hold up to the name that she claims herself to have, or at least that she kind of puts herself under. I feel that when it comes to humanity, she does a disservice to what she claims that she's supposed to be doing. When it comes down to it, especially when it comes to her just focusing on the troublesome existence of dogs, she doesn't talk about bigger issues when it comes to people and situations involving humans. Last time I checked, especially with a lot of her videos, she doesn't talk about situations that go on in the Middle East. She doesn't talk about people who are sexually abused, or for that matter, being trafficked for slavery. She doesn't talk about the variety of different travesties that happen to humanity, but in some sense discusses, continuously discusses, or more obsessively focuses on the heinous dogs that exist on planet Earth. To an extent, she doesn't discuss, the mass majority of the shootings that occur on this particular planet. She doesn't discuss the atrocities that humanity does to each other. The vile, wretched things that we do to each other. And she wants to claim herself to be the defender of humans. Give me a fucking break. And when it comes to behavior like this, especially when it comes down to her inadequate arguments and gestures, as well as her ways to try to shame people for not agreeing with her, just makes her seem very, very childish. So, K9-Aversion, I will not be calling you by the name that you claim yourself to be, because I don't think you hold up to it. And as far as I can tell, people can find you very easily by using the name K9-Aversion. And when it comes down to your claims of people shaming you or shaming your name, I'm sorry, but with the way you've presented yourself, you did that to yourself. Or caused your own situation. So don't go blaming myself or many others who have talked about your videos. Because in the end, it's all on you. But anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Truly appreciate it. If you have any thoughts, leave in the comments down below. Like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. If you guys want to follow us on social media, links are in the description down below, as well as check out our daily content. and the weekly podcast. Check us out on Discord as well. With that being said, this is Rob Novakast signing off. Have a good one, and take care. Peace.